AITA for canceling my wedding and using the deposit to run off to Tokyo after her Vegas stunt? A little backstory. First, I'm a 32-year-old man living in Seattle. Good salary, stable life. I own my condo downtown. My ex-fiancée, let's call her Morgan, is 29. We were together for 4 years, engaged for 8 months. On paper, we seemed perfect for each other. Young professionals, good jobs, shared interests, similar backgrounds. Everyone said we were the ideal couple. When we met at a mutual friend's housewarming party, Morgan was everything I thought I wanted in a partner. She was the extrovert to my reserved nature, spontaneous where I was more of a planner, sociable while I was more of a homebody. She brought excitement to my structured life, and I thought I brought stability to hers. A classic case of opposites attract. She could talk to anyone at a party. She always knew the coolest new restaurants. She had an infectious laugh that made everyone around her feel good. I fell hard and fast. Within 6 months, I was spending most nights at her place. Within a year, we were talking about officially moving in together. Everything felt natural, easy. Morgan would surprise me with tickets to concerts I'd mentioned wanting to see. I'd surprise her with reservations at restaurants she'd saved on Instagram. We had this rhythm that felt perfect, but perfect things rarely stay that way. The problem started subtly, as it always does. About 2 years into our relationship, I noticed Morgan had a habit of comparing me to other men. Not directly, but with little comments that stung if you thought about them too much. Oh, Jenna's boyfriend surprised her with a weekend in Napa. How romantic. Or, did you see the flowers another friend's husband sent to his wife's office? She's so lucky to have someone so thoughtful. Oh, and my personal favorite, Sienna's dating a chef. Imagine having someone cook for you every night. At first, I let it slide. Everyone compares their relationships to others sometimes. It's only human. But the comments became more frequent, more pointed. Morgan would show me Instagram posts of her friends' boyfriends making grand romantic gestures and sigh as if she were disappointed with what she had. I tried to be more spontaneous, more romantic. I started planning surprise date nights, sending flowers to her office occasionally, and learning to cook new dishes to impress her. But it never seemed to be enough. There was always some new standard I wasn't meeting, always some other man doing something better. I'd send flowers, and she'd mention that her co-worker's husband sent flowers and chocolates. I'd plan a surprise trip, and she'd talk about how another friend's boyfriend rented a private jet for their getaway. It was exhausting, but I loved her. I wanted to make her happy, so I kept trying. The worst part, however, was her relationship with her ex, Mason. They had dated for 2 years in college at the University of Washington and broke up when he moved to Los Angeles to work in the entertainment industry. Morgan always insisted they were just friends now, but that friendship made me deeply uncomfortable, not because I was some controlling, jealous type, but because of the way she talked about him. Mason was apparently everything I wasn't. Spontaneous, adventurous, successful in Hollywood, working as some kind of talent agent. Morgan brought him up constantly, always in contrast to me. Mason is working on an incredible project with a big streaming service. Mason just bought a house in the Hollywood Hills. Mason always knew how to make me laugh. Mason would have loved this restaurant. Mason used to surprise me with the most thoughtful gifts. It was as if Mason had become this impossible standard I was measured against time and time again. The adored ex who could do no wrong, who had set the bar so high that I could never reach it. I tried talking to Morgan about this several times over the years. Each conversation ended the same way. She would get defensive, accuse me of being insecure, and assure me that Mason was ancient history. "You're the one I'm with," she'd say, usually rolling her eyes. "You're the one I said yes to when you proposed. I don't understand why you feel so threatened by someone from my past." But here's what really bothered me. I didn't feel threatened by Mason because he was her ex. I was worried about Mason because Morgan clearly hadn't moved on from that relationship. When the person you love constantly brings up someone else, when they use that person as an example of what you should be doing better, that's not friendship. That's unfinished business. Looking back, I realize I proposed because Morgan was constantly dropping hints about wanting to get married. Not subtle hints, either. She would stop in front of jewelry stores and comment on rings. She would bring up our friends' engagements constantly. She would send me Pinterest boards full of wedding ideas, just for fun. She'd make jokes about how we'd been together so long that people were starting to ask. I wonder now if she was just ready to settle down with someone stable, and I was the safe choice, the one who would give her the life she wanted while she figured out if something better might come along. The proposal itself was beautiful. I took her to the place where we first met at that housewarming party. Our friend had moved out, but the new owners were kind and let me set up a romantic evening on their terrace overlooking the water. Morgan cried with happiness, called her parents immediately, and posted about it on social media in under an hour. Everything seemed perfect. However, the engagement period was where things really started to fall apart, though I didn't see it clearly at the time. Morgan threw herself into wedding planning with an intensity that was both impressive and exhausting. Everything had to be perfect, Instagram-worthy, fit for the fairy tale she had apparently dreamed of since she was a little girl. We looked at venues that cost more than my car. She insisted on a designer dress that cost more than some people's entire weddings, a $4,000 gown from a boutique in Pioneer Square that required 4 fittings and special alterations. I went along with it because I loved her and wanted her to be happy. Plus, I make good money, so while it was a stretch, I could technically afford the wedding she wanted. We put down a $15,000 deposit just for the venue, a beautiful vineyard outside of Seattle that books up years in advance. Another $3,000 for the photographer she absolutely had to have. $2,500 for the florist. $1,000 for the DJ. The costs kept piling up, but Morgan assured me it would all be worth it for our perfect day. But as the wedding got closer, Morgan seemed more excited about the event than about actually marrying me. She would spend hours on Pinterest creating boards for the perfect wedding. She talked constantly about how beautiful everything would look, how jealous her friends would be, how many likes the photos would get on social media. She had spreadsheets for everything: seating charts, timelines, vendor contacts, contingency plans for rain. What she didn't talk about was our future together, our marriage, our actual plans as husband and wife. When I tried to talk about practical things like combining finances, where we wanted to live long-term, or if and when we wanted kids, she'd brush it off. Let's just get through the wedding first, then we can figure all that out. That should have been a red flag. Getting married is supposed to be the beginning of planning a life together, not something you put off until after the party. The bachelorette party was her idea, obviously. Morgan wanted to go to Las Vegas with her college friends and a few coworkers. A long weekend at the Cosmopolitan, pool parties, clubs, shows, the whole stereotypical Vegas bachelorette experience. She had been planning it for months, creating group chats, coordinating flights, and booking activities. I wasn't thrilled about it, mainly because I knew Mason now lived in Los Angeles, just a few hours from Vegas. When I mentioned this concern, Morgan rolled her eyes hard. Mason has nothing to do with my bachelorette party. This is about celebrating with my girls before I become a married woman. You're being paranoid. Maybe she was right, I thought. Maybe I was being paranoid. I planned my own bachelor party for the same weekend. Something much quieter. My college buddies, a rented cabin in the Cascade Mountains, hiking, craft beer, and poker. To each their own, right? Morgan left for Vegas on Thursday morning, April 15th. She was practically vibrating with excitement as I dropped her off at the airport, which I found a little strange. I mean, she was excited about our wedding, too, but this felt different, more intense. She was constantly checking her phone, texting her group chat, and taking selfies for her Vegas or bust Instagram stories. I'm going to miss you, I said as I left her at the terminal. You too, babe, she said, giving me a quick peck before grabbing her suitcase. Don't do anything too crazy on your bachelor party. That was the last genuine gesture of affection we would ever share. Thursday night, she sent the usual texts. Pictures from a steakhouse dinner, updates on their hotel suite at the Cosmopolitan, complaints about how expensive the drinks were. OMG, bottle service is like $500. Good thing we're splitting it. Normal bachelorette party stuff. I was having a good time with my friends at the cabin, so I wasn't paying too much attention to my phone. Friday was when things started to feel strange. Morgan's texts became less frequent and more vague. Instead of detailed updates on what they were doing, I'd get messages like having a blast or Vegas is crazy, accompanied by group photos where everyone looked drunk and happy. When I'd ask for details about what they'd done during the day, she'd reply with something like, too much to type. I'll tell you when I get back. This was odd. Morgan usually loved giving me a detailed play-by-play of her outings. She would send me almost minute-by-minute accounts with pictures and commentary on everything happening. The vagueness wasn't her. Friday night, one of Morgan's friends, Sienna, accidentally added me to a group text that was clearly meant only for the bachelorette party girls. The message read, "Mason looks so good. Morgan can barely contain herself. LOL. This is like watching a rom-com unfold." Sienna immediately sent another text. "Oops. Sorry, wrong chat," and removed me from the group before I could see anything else. I stared at my phone for a good 10 minutes, reading that message over and over. Mason was in Las Vegas at Morgan's bachelorette party, and apparently, Morgan was having some kind of reaction to seeing him, one noticeable enough for her friends to comment on it in a group chat. My hands shaking, I called Morgan immediately. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Nothing. I texted her. "Hey, call me when you see this." Sienna accidentally added me to a group chat. "Is Mason there?" No response for 3 hours. 3 hours of me sitting in the cabin with my friends, trying to act normal while my mind raced through every possible scenario. My best friend, Ethan, noticed I was off and asked if everything was okay, but I couldn't bring myself to explain. Not yet. Finally, Morgan called back around 2 a.m. Her time, 1 a.m. Mine. She was clearly drunk, slurring her words with loud club music blasting in the background. "Babe, I miss you so much," she practically yelled into the phone. "Morgan, is Mason there?" A long pause. The music got fainter, like she'd moved to a more private area. "Who told you that?" "Sienna accidentally added me to your chat." "Is he there?" Another pause, this one longer. I could hear her breathing. "It's not a big deal. He was in town for work and heard we were here from mutual friends. He just stopped by to say hi." "Just stopped by to say hi?" "Morgan, it's 2 in the morning. You're at a club. How does someone just stop by a club? We ran into him earlier. Look, I'm drunk and tired and this music is super loud. Can we just talk about this when I get home?" "Morgan, wait." She hung up before I could finish my sentence. I didn't sleep at all that night. I kept replaying Sienna's text. "Morgan can barely contain herself." That's not how you describe someone casually running into an old friend at a club. It's how you describe someone who is thrilled, maybe even aroused, to see someone they still have feelings for. I also kept thinking about how Morgan had said Mason heard they were there. How exactly would he hear that? Unless someone told him. Unless, perhaps, they had been in contact before the trip. Saturday was worse. Morgan's communication became even more sporadic. A few selfies from pool parties, generic having so much fun texts, no real details, but nothing substantial. The photos she did send showed her in different outfits throughout the day, clearly going back to the room to change, which meant she was sober enough at various points to make decisions about her appearance. So why wasn't she answering my calls? I tried calling her twice during what should have been normal hours. Once around noon, once around 6 p.m. Both calls went straight to voicemail. When I texted asking if everything was okay, she replied, "All good, just busy with the girls." That night, my best friend Ethan pulled me aside during our bachelor party dinner. We were at a cool steakhouse in a nearby town. Everyone else was having a good time, but I had been checking my phone every 5 minutes and probably looked like I was on the verge of a breakdown. "Dude, not to get in your business, but are you okay? You've checked your phone 1,000 times, and you look like you're going to be sick." I told him what was happening. The accidental text. Mason in Vegas. Morgan's weird communication. Ethan has been married to his college sweetheart for 5 years and is one of the most level-headed people I know. After he listened, he was quiet for a moment. "Look, I'm going to say something you might not want to hear. If Morgan is being sketchy about her ex showing up to her bachelorette party, that is a huge red flag. Like a nuclear-level red flag. Maybe I'm overreacting," I said, even though I didn't believe it. "Seriously, think about it objectively. She's been comparing you to this guy for years. She's always talking about him. Now he shows up at her bachelorette party, which, let's be honest, probably wasn't a coincidence. And suddenly she's being all secretive and weird with her communication. What does your gut tell you?" My gut was telling me something was very wrong. Even if something is happening, what am I supposed to do? Fly to Vegas and check up on her? I'll look like a crazy, controlling psycho. "You don't have to do anything right now," Ethan said. "But maybe you should prepare yourself for the possibility that this might not end well." That night, I made a decision that probably sounds insane, but in the moment, It felt completely right. I started looking over our wedding contracts. I couldn't sleep anyway, and I needed to do something with the anxiety that was eating me alive. So, I opened my laptop and started reading through all the wedding documentation. It turned out we had a clause in our venue contract that allowed for cancellation with 72 hours notice, though we'd forfeit the entire deposit. The caterer had a similar policy: full refund if we canceled with 2 weeks' notice, partial refund up to a week before, no refund after that. The photographer would refund everything except a $500 booking fee if we canceled with more than a week's notice. I wasn't planning on canceling anything yet. I was just preparing. Call it life diligence, or call it the first sign that I was already mentally starting to check out of the relationship. Sunday morning, I still hadn't heard much from Morgan. Just a few pictures from what looked like a group brunch, mimosas and eggs Benedict, and everyone wearing sunglasses indoors. When I asked what they had planned for their last day, she replied, "Just recovering from last night, LOL. Probably hit the pool and take it easy." But then I saw something that changed everything. I don't usually follow Morgan's ex on social media. In fact, I'd unfollowed him months ago because I was sick of accidentally seeing updates about his seemingly amazing life. But we were still technically connected, and the app's algorithm decided to show me one of his stories. Mason had posted a story from what looked like a rooftop party or club. The video was dark and blurry, typical late-night party footage, but I could clearly hear Morgan's laugh in the background. Not just her normal laugh, but that distinct, flirty laugh she used when she was really enjoying someone's attention. Even more, at one point in the video, you could see someone's wrist reaching for a drink. And on that wrist was Morgan's distinctive bracelet, a vintage piece I'd bought her for her 28th birthday. It was unique enough that it couldn't be anyone else. The post was time-stamped around 11 p.m. Saturday, Vegas time. So while Morgan was telling me they were having a low-key night, she was actually at a rooftop party with Mason and apparently having such a good time that her laugh was audible on his social media. I took a screenshot and sent it to Morgan with a message. "Care to explain why you're at a rooftop party with Mason when you said you were having a quiet night?" She didn't reply. Not in an hour, not in 6 hours, not all day Sunday. Finally, around 6 p.m. on Sunday, the day before they were due back, my phone buzzed with the message that broke everything. "What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, including my ex who just showed up. Don't worry, we're just having fun catching up. Love you." I read that message about 50 times. The casual tone, the winky face emoji, the exclamation points, the way she framed Mason's presence as some sort of fun surprise rather than something she had been hiding from me for 3 days. But it was the phrase, "What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas," that really hit me. That's not something you say when you're innocently catching up with an old friend. It's something you say when you're doing things you don't want your fiancé to know about. I typed and deleted about 20 different replies. Part of me wanted to confront her, to demand answers, to start a fight. Another part wanted to call her and beg her to explain, to give me an innocent reason for all of this. Instead, I just texted back, "Have fun." Then, I got to work. First, I called the wedding venue. It was a Sunday evening, but they had an emergency line for situations like weather issues or family emergencies. I explained that we needed to cancel due to unforeseen family circumstances. The coordinator was sympathetic but firm on the policy. Canceling with less than a month's notice meant forfeiting the entire $15,000 deposit. I told her I understood and accepted the loss. Next, I called the caterer. Same story, no refund possible with such short notice. But at least we wouldn't have to pay the remaining $8,000 balance. The photographer was more understanding. Since I called on a Sunday night with 3 weeks to go, she was willing to refund everything except the $500 booking fee. That was $2,500 back in my pocket. The florist had a strict no refunds policy if canceled with less than 30 days notice, so I lost the $800 deposit there, too. The DJ, luckily, required final payment on the day of the event, so I only lost the $300 booking fee. In total, I lost around $18,000 in deposits and fees in a single night. But here's the thing. Morgan and I had kept our finances mostly separate. We split shared expenses like dinners or trips, but big purchases came out of individual accounts. All of the wedding deposits had come from my savings account. It was technically my money to lose. By Sunday night, I had canceled everything except our Santorini honeymoon reservation. I was saving that for last because I had a different plan for that money. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. Morgan had always talked about wanting to visit Japan. It was on her bucket list, something she mentioned wanting to do for as long as we were together. She'd show me articles about hotels in Tokyo, send me blog posts about eating ramen in tiny shops in Shibuya, and talk about how amazing it would be to see the cherry blossoms in Kyoto. We never went because Morgan was always too busy with work, or we were saving for the wedding, or the timing wasn't right, or she was worried about the long flight. There was always an excuse. But I had always wanted to go too. I'd been learning basic Japanese on an app for months. I had researched neighborhoods, restaurants, and temples. I was just waiting for Morgan to be ready to commit to the trip. Well, now I didn't have to wait for Morgan anymore. On Sunday night, sitting in my apartment while Morgan was presumably still in Vegas doing who knows what with Mason, I booked a round-trip ticket to Tokyo, leaving Monday afternoon. I booked a nice hotel in Shibuya for 2 weeks. I used the money I had been saving for our Santorini honeymoon, about $8,000 that I would have gladly spent on a romantic trip to Greece with my wife. Instead, I was going to spend it on a solo adventure in Japan. The flight was $1,200. The hotel was $200 a night for 14 nights, so $2,800. That left me with about $4,000 for food, transportation, activities, and souvenirs. More than enough for a spectacular trip. When I clicked Confirm Purchase on the hotel booking, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Excitement. Pure, simple excitement for something that was just for me. On Monday morning, Morgan called me around 7 a.m. my time. They were at the airport, waiting for their flight back to Seattle. Hey babe, we're at the gate, waiting to board. God, this weekend was insane. I can't wait to tell you all about it. The fake enthusiasm in her voice was almost impressive, as if she hadn't spent 4 days lying to me and hiding the presence of her ex-boyfriend at what was supposed to be a celebration of our upcoming marriage. Sounds like you had fun, I said, my voice neutral. The most fun. Mason even extended his work trip to hang out with us more. It was so crazy seeing him after all this time. Such a small world. We have so many mutual friends. He was asking about you, by the way. Mason had extended his trip to spend more time with my fiancée and her friends at her bachelorette party. And she was telling me this like it was some cute, funny anecdote. I'll bet he was, I replied. Are you okay? You sound weird. Just tired. Long weekend. Well, I'll be home around 6. Let's get Thai food and have a chill night. I'm so exhausted. Vegas just drains you. Actually, Morgan, I won't be here when you get home. A long pause. I could hear airport announcements in the background. The murmur of her friends. What do you mean? Where are you going? To Japan. An even longer pause. Japan? What are you talking about? We're getting married in 3 weeks. No, we're not. The silence stretched for so long, I thought the call had dropped. Finally, what? I canceled the wedding, Morgan. The venue, the caterer, the photographer. It's all done. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line, but she didn't say anything for nearly a full minute. When she finally spoke, her voice was completely different, higher pitched, laced with panic. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. I'm at SeaTac right now, actually. My flight boards in 2 hours. This is insane. You can't just cancel our wedding because you're having some kind of paranoid breakdown. I'm not having a breakdown, Morgan. I'm making a rational decision based on the information I have. What information? That I ran into Mason in Vegas? That's not a reason to call off a wedding. There it was again. I ran into Mason's story. As if it were pure coincidence that he happened to be in Vegas the same weekend as her bachelorette party. It's not just that you ran into him, Morgan. It's that you lied to me about it from the beginning. It's that you've been secretive and acting strange all weekend. It's that you sent me a text saying, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, like you're keeping secrets from your fiancé. You're totally misinterpreting that text. Oh, am I? Then explain it to me. Explain why you hid the fact that Mason was there from the moment it happened. Explain why your friend said you could barely contain yourself when you saw him. Explain why you've been distant and vague all weekend instead of giving me details like you always do. Another long pause. I could hear her friends asking if everything was okay, her whispering for them to give her a minute. Look, I was excited to see Mason, okay? We have history. But that doesn't mean anything happened. But something did happen, didn't it? Not what you're thinking. And what am I thinking, Morgan? That you got physical with him or something? The pause was all I needed to know. It stretched on, filled with the noise of the airport and her increasingly ragged breathing. It's not that simple, she finally said, and my heart sank, even though I'd been expecting it. It's exactly that simple. You were either faithful this weekend, or you weren't. We kissed. Okay, we kissed. It was stupid. I was drunk, and it didn't mean anything. It was just nostalgia and alcohol and the craziness of Vegas. Just a kiss. Another pause. Maybe more than a kiss. But it was just physical. It was nostalgia and alcohol and the whole Vegas vibe. It meant nothing. I sat there in the airport terminal, listening to the woman I thought I was going to marry in 3 weeks admit that she had been unfaithful to me with her ex-boyfriend. And a strange thing happened. I felt relieved. Not happy, not vindicated, just relieved. Because now I knew for sure. My instincts had been right. Now I had confirmation that the woman I planned to spend my life with had lied to me, hidden things from me, and ultimately betrayed me. Thank you for finally being honest, I said. So we can get past this, right? People make mistakes. It doesn't have to ruin our engagement. I was drunk and stupid. It won't happen again. Morgan, you didn't make a mistake. You made a series of choices. You chose to hide that Mason was there. You chose to spend time with him instead of focusing on your bachelorette party. You chose to drink with him. You chose to be alone with him. You chose to kiss him, and you chose to do more than kiss him. Those weren't accidents or mistakes. They were choices. You're being ridiculous. People have bachelorette parties and things get out of hand. It's totally normal. Ask anyone. Not for me. And clearly not for you. Either, since you spent the whole weekend lying about it. Are you really going to throw away 4 years over one stupid night? I'm not throwing anything away, Morgan. You threw it away when you decided your ex was more important than your fiancé. When you decided to lie to me. When you chose him over me. She started to cry then. Loud, ugly sobs that I could hear clearly over the phone. Please don't do this. Please. I love you. I want to marry you. Mason means nothing to me. If Mason means nothing to you, then what you did is even worse. You blew up our relationship for someone you don't even care about. I will do anything to fix this. Anything. I will never see Mason again. I'll change jobs if I have to. I'll go to therapy. Whatever you want. There's nothing to fix, Morgan. You showed me who you are when you thought you could get away with it. So where does that leave us? It leaves you single, and it leaves me on a plane to Tokyo. I hung up and turned off my phone. Morgan tried to call me about 20 more times before I boarded the flight. I saw the notifications light up my screen, but I didn't answer. I also had texts from several of her friends. Apparently, she had called them in a panic after our conversation. Sienna sent me a long text apologizing and saying she never should have encouraged the group to include Mason in their activities. Too little, too late. Another of Morgan's friends, Jenna, texted me saying I was overreacting and ruining Morgan's life over nothing. I deleted it without replying. The flight to Tokyo was incredible. 13 hours of movies, books, and thinking. No calls, no texts, no one demanding explanations or trying to convince me I was making a mistake. Just quiet and space to process everything that had happened. By the time we landed at Narita Airport, I felt lighter than I had in months, maybe years. Tokyo was exactly what I needed. For 2 weeks, I explored a city where no one knew me or my story. I ate incredible food, ramen in tiny shops where I was the only non-Japanese customer, sushi from the famous Tsukiji market, yakitori from street stalls in Shinjuku. I visited temples that had been standing for hundreds of years. I walked through neighborhoods that felt like stepping into another world. I took a day trip to see Mount Fuji, though it was cloudy and I could only see the base. I spent hours in bookstores and electronic shops in Akihabara, even though I couldn't read most of the books or understand the technical specs on the gadgets. I took trains everywhere, marveling at how clean and efficient they were. Most importantly, I had time to think clearly about my relationship with Morgan, without her there to spin the narrative, downplay what happened, or try to talk me into giving her another chance. The red flags had been there for years, and I had ignored them because I loved her and wanted us to work. The constant comparisons to other men, especially Mason. The way she talked about Mason as if he were some perfect ideal that I could never live up to. The focus on appearances and social media instead of the substance of our relationship. The fact that she seemed more excited about the wedding, the party, the photos, the attention, than about the marriage itself. I had been so focused on trying to be the man she wanted that I'd lost sight of whether she was the woman I actually wanted to spend my life with. The answer, I realized somewhere between visiting the Sensoji temple and eating the best ramen of my life in a tiny Shibuya shop, was no. She wasn't. Morgan had sent me probably 100 texts during my first few days in Tokyo. I turned my phone on after I landed, but kept it on airplane mode, only checking it at night in the hotel. Most of the texts repeated the same themes: that she was sorry, that it was a mistake, that she wanted to fix things, that I was overreacting, that Mason meant nothing, that we could get through this if I just gave her a chance. Some were angry, accusing me of being cruel and extreme for canceling the wedding without letting her properly explain, for running away to Japan instead of fighting for our relationship like an adult. One of the texts, sent on my third day in Tokyo, was particularly telling. You can't just run away to Japan instead of facing our problems. This is what people do when they're afraid of confrontation. Come home and let's talk about this like adults. The irony almost made me laugh. I wasn't running away from our problems. I was running away from her attempts to minimize and justify her choices, running away from the inevitable hours she would spend trying to convince me that it wasn't a big deal, that I should be grateful she was being honest now, that we could get past it if I just tried a little harder. I sent her a single text on day 5. I'm not angry anymore, and I'm not hurt. I'm just done. Please don't contact me again. She respected that request for about 12 hours before she started texting again. On my 7th day in Tokyo, I got a call from my friend Ethan. I had texted him briefly to let him know I was safe and out of the country, but with no details. Dude, Morgan has been calling everyone trying to find out where you are. She's telling people you had some kind of mental breakdown and disappeared. What the hell happened? I told him the whole story. Vegas, Mason, the lies, the unfaithfulness, everything. When I finished, Ethan was quiet for a moment. Holy crap. I knew something was wrong when you were staring at your phone all weekend, but I didn't think it was that bad. Yeah, well, it was worse than I thought too. So you did it. You canceled the whole wedding, everything? Yep. Lost about $18,000 in deposits, but it was worth it. And you're really in Tokyo? Yeah. And I'm having an amazing time. Good for you, man. Seriously. Morgan made her choice, and you made yours. Don't let anyone tell you that you overreacted. That conversation helped me realize that I had done the right thing, not because Ethan agreed with me, but because saying it all out loud, I could hear how absurd the whole situation was. My fiancée had lied to me for 4 days about her ex being at her bachelorette party. Then she was unfaithful to me with him. And then she tried to downplay it as a meaningless mistake that shouldn't affect our engagement. Who does that? Who lies to their fiancé and then acts shocked when there are consequences? When I got back to Seattle 2 weeks later, I felt like a different person. Calmer, more self-assured, clearer about what I wanted out of life and out of a relationship. The trip had been exactly what I needed: space, perspective, and proof that I could be happy on my own. Morgan was waiting in the lobby of my condo building when I arrived. She looked terrible, like she hadn't been sleeping or eating well for weeks, which was probably true. We need to talk, she said, standing up from the couch where she had apparently been waiting for me. No, we don't, I said, wheeling my suitcase toward the elevator. Yes, we do. You can't just disappear for 2 weeks and not give me a chance to fight for us. I pressed the elevator button and looked at her. This woman I had spent 4 years with. This woman I was supposed to marry in 10 days. And I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not love. Nothing. Morgan, there is no us anymore. I thought I made that clear. You made a decision when you were emotional and upset. But you've had time to think, and so have I. We can fix this. I know we can. The elevator arrived. I stepped inside. Morgan followed me. What exactly do you want to fix? I asked as we rode up. I want you to forgive me. I want to reschedule the wedding. I want to start over and do it right. And what about Mason? Mason was a mistake. I've blocked him on everything. I'm never speaking to him again. I've even started looking for a new job so I don't have to travel to LA. And why did it take all of this happening for you to decide that? She didn't have an answer. We reached my floor, and I walked to my apartment. Morgan followed, talking nonstop. I know I messed up. I know I should have told you Mason was in Vegas from the beginning. I know I should have left when he showed up. But I was confused and I was drunk, and he was bringing up feelings I thought I didn't have anymore. I unlocked my apartment door and turned to face her. Morgan, even if you never speak to Mason again, the fundamental problem is still there. You don't respect me enough to be faithful. You don't value our relationship enough to prioritize it over your impulses. And you don't respect me enough to be honest when you mess up. That's not true. You hid that Mason was in Vegas for 3 days. You lied to me repeatedly about what you were doing and who you were with. And you only told the truth when you couldn't lie anymore, because I had proof. How is that respecting me? I was scared of how you would react. So you chose to lie instead of facing my reaction. Morgan, that's not how a marriage works. That's not how any healthy relationship works. We talked for another hour in the hallway outside my apartment, but it was pointless. Morgan was still operating under the assumption that this was a problem that could be fixed, rather than a fundamental incompatibility that had been exposed. She thought that if she apologized enough, promised to change enough, and made enough concessions, she could undo the choices she made in Vegas. But you can't undo being unfaithful to someone. You can't untell a lie. You can't unshow someone who you really are when you think they aren't looking. The breakup took another month to fully finalize. Morgan kept finding ways to stay connected. She needed to pick up her things from my condo. She wanted to return the engagement ring in person. She had left a book that was supposedly very important. She wanted to talk about what to tell our mutual friends. Every interaction was just another attempt to convince me to change my mind. I was polite but firm. The engagement was over. The relationship was over. I wished her the best, but I did not want to be her friend. I did not want updates on her life. Comment. What I hope you all take away from this story is not just about the pain of being let down, but about the power of choosing yourself. Sometimes, the most difficult endings are actually opportunities to rediscover who you are and what truly makes you happy. Trust your intuition when something feels wrong, and never be afraid to walk away from a situation that diminishes your worth. Your own adventure, one that is true to you, is always waiting just on the other side of a closed door. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.